I was not one of those who believed in horror stories. Not because I considered myself brave, it just always seemed to me that behind all the stories about ghosts, cursed places, and cursed objects there are either impressionable minds or those who want hype. But I've always had an interest in forgotten, abandoned places. It was like a personal ritual to come to a place where everything is dead, empty, where nature is slowly taking back what man once built. It started as a YouTube project. My channel was modest, with a couple thousand subscribers. I've shot videos from abandoned locations, often with a hidden camera or a GoPro strapped to my chest. No screamers, no cheap effects. It's just me, a flashlight, and a camera. I was showing reality as it is, creaking boards, debris left over from former residents, graffiti, broken windows, and the stench of mold. People were watching it for some reason. There must have been something about seeing someone go where you wouldn't go even during the day. One day I got an email. Someone with no name, no photo, just a bunch of words. The letter was short. Check the old cemetery behind the mines. No one has been there for a long time. Look at it at night. Just one. If you're not a coward. At first I thought it was someone's prank. But the coordinates were real. The satellite images actually showed something like a cemetery, overgrown with trees, away from the nearest roads, surrounded by forest and fields. There was no information about him on the internet. Even old mentions. It was as if it existed outside of time, outside of archives. It got me hooked. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I did believe in forgotten stories. A week later, I packed everything I needed. Several cameras, a flashlight with spare batteries, a GPS tracker, food and water for the night, a folding knife, not because I was expecting something terrible, but just in case. I left the car about a kilometer away from the coordinates. Beyond that there was only a country path covered with foliage and littered with fallen trees. I reached the cemetery before sunset. It was real. So real that it took my breath away when I first saw it through the branches. There was no fence, no gate. Just stone tombstones scattered on the slope among sparse trees, and the ground pitted with roots and molehills. The plaques were erased. Some crosses were lying on the ground. It felt like no one had set foot here for a long time. And yet, the grass around some of the graves was flattened. It immediately caught my eye, although I tried not to think about it. I turned on the recording, fixed the GoPro and started shooting. He just described everything he saw in a calm, measured way. The sun was setting fast, and soon everything around was painted in dark blue and gray shades. I settled down by an old tree with a view of the entire slope and unfolded my backpack. The plan was simple: spend the night, record everything that happens, and edit the video in the morning. No more. Everything went fine at first. There were sounds of the forest, the chirping of insects, the wind, the rustle of leaves. I was checking the cameras, commenting on the situation. Then I heard a crunch. Not loud, but clear. It was as if someone had stepped on a branch. I froze, turned off the flashlight. I left only the IR camera. After a few minutes, there was another crunch. And again. Footsteps? A moose? A deer? Maybe. But the steps were heavy and measured. Like a human. I got up and followed the sound. I made sure that the camera was recording. It wasn't because I was afraid of ghosts that I got creepy. No. I began to realize that maybe I wasn't alone. And this is worse than any mysticism. I walked past 3 crooked tombstones, climbed a little higher up the slope and noticed that one of the tombstones was new. It was white, almost without moss, and it had a plaque with embossed letters, clear and fresh. Don't write it down. I was petrified. I took a closer look. It wasn't a phantom, the plaque was real, made of metal, neatly mounted. Someone installed it recently. And someone knew that I would be filming. I turned around. The back is empty. But the feeling of someone else's gaze did not leave me. I came closer and noticed that the inscription was not embossed. It scratched out. Unevenly, but with force. The metal was scratched by something sharp, maybe a knife. The recording continued. I lifted the sign to see if it was fake, and underneath it, taped to the back, was a small dictaphone. I turned it on. The recording started with a bang. Then, breathing. It's been a long, hard time. And the voice. If you're listening to this, it means you're already here. Look to the left. He's there. I turned around instantly. Nothing. But it wasn't a montage. Not processing. The sound was recorded live. With a kind of metallic background hum, as if work was going on nearby. I didn't turn off the recorder. I just put it in my pocket. That's when I realized I shouldn't have come here alone. And from that moment on, everything went to hell. I was standing there in the middle of an abandoned cemetery, with a dictaphone in my pocket, and I was shaking not from the cold, but from the realization that someone knew I was coming. Someone installed this voice recorder, recorded this message. It couldn't just be a prank, there are no such coincidences. They knew me. They were waiting for me. I turned around again, this time slowly, measuring every inch of space, trying to look between the trees, behind the tombstones, and to the sides. Blood was pounding in my ears, and every rustle under my feet felt like an explosion. The flashlight provided a faint spot of light, and everything seemed normal within its boundaries. But beyond them, it's damn empty. I headed back to my backpack, trying not to make any noise, but every step through the dry branches sounded like I was falling through glass. When I returned to my seat, I immediately started checking the cameras. One stopped writing. The battery? No, the battery was fresh. She just shut down. The second one was recording, but it was twitching as if someone was moving a tripod. I couldn't believe my eyes. The tripod was fixed. No one touched him. I would have heard. Or, he should have heard. I took a deep breath, sat down on the ground, leaning back against a tree. I needed to calm down, turn on my head. They're not ghosts. It's a man. Someone is playing with me. The question is why? Maybe I should have left. But then why did I come here? People don't subscribe to a channel for the sake of a beautiful picture. They want to see someone go where they wouldn't risk going themselves. They want to feel fear through me. And if I run away now, it will all be for nothing. I decided to stay. I adjusted my night vision, turned on the camera on my frontal mount, and began filming myself. He explained what had happened, showed me the tombstone, and told me about the dictaphone. He spoke calmly, trying not to betray how his fists were actually clenching from exertion. Everything was screaming inside, "Go away." But I stayed. It must have been about 20 minutes. Everything was quiet. The forest has become somewhat sticky to the sound. The sounds are muffled, as if someone wrapped cotton wool around the trees. And that's when I noticed the movement. Barely noticeable, at the edge of visibility. The camera caught it. I rewound it. In the video, a figure flashed in the distance, between two tombstones. An ordinary human one. In dark clothes. But that's what bothered me, she didn't move. She just stood there. One frame. There is no next one. Disappeared. I got up. The light of the flashlight was rushing in all directions, and I was walking towards where the figure was visible. Empty. Not a trace, not a sound, not even a hint of someone's presence. Only the grass, flattened in one place, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. I came closer, and I saw it, boot. Simple, old, dirty. Left. There was no second one. I didn't touch him. I just made a video of it. Then he started walking around. And I found the first piece of paper. It was wet and dirty, but the inscription was preserved. This is not a cemetery. It's a place where they forget who you are. I didn't know what that meant, but it became difficult for me to breathe. I squatted down, looking around. My brain was racing. Who wrote this? And most importantly, why here, in this place where even tombstones are anonymous? I decided to continue my rounds. At the other end of the cemetery, behind a thicket of bushes, I came across a concrete slab sunk into the ground. It looks like there used to be a chapel or a crypt here. Everything is littered with earth and rocks. But next to the stove, I saw a small campfire that had long since gone out. Charcoal, charred branches, the remains of a food bag, and something like an old sweatshirt. It was all relatively fresh. Someone was here. Recently. I started shooting the details with the camera when I suddenly heard a sharp click and my flashlight turned off. It just went out. No flicker, no discharge signal. It went out. I didn't panic. I got a spare one. Turned it on. A light appeared, and in that light, behind me, was a second shoe. Not where I found it. And right behind. 2 steps away. Someone's here. He's nearby. He's watching. He's not just scary, he's playing a game. I didn't run. Although the body was asking for it. I sat down on the ground, turned on the camera, and spoke softly. If you want to talk, talk. If you want to scare me, I'm already scared. But if you want me to leave, say it and I'll leave. Silence. Just the wind. And suddenly, very softly, as if from afar, but definitely a human voice. It's getting late. He was calm. Male, slightly hoarse. I lost my temper. I got up and ran to where it was coming from. But nothing. Only tombstones and thickets. No people, no lights, no footprints. I've returned. The camera was recording everything. The battery was running low. I turned on the recorder, it was still working. And there was another record on it that turned on by itself. It began simply. You'll think that everything is under control, until you realize that the camera is not the only thing that captures you. I sat staring into the darkness in which I had just heard the voice. Everything inside me was telling me, I'm not alone. But the man was nowhere to be found. There were no footsteps, no silhouettes, not even breathing, just recordings on a dictaphone and fragments of anxiety that were getting heavier. I couldn't just leave. That would be a defeat. Moreover, there was already evidence, videos, recordings, evidence. It's all real. The cameras were working, the recorder was writing, and my heart was beating as if it wanted to burst out of my chest. I had to keep going. I got up again, checked the cameras, replaced the battery with the head one, and went to where I heard the voice. He walked slowly, scanning every meter with a flashlight. The ground was soft under my feet, and in some places my foot sank into the loose earth, making a squelching sound, as if I were treading on thick mud or rotten foliage. To my right, I noticed an old tombstone, almost completely hidden in the ground. The plaque flew off, leaving only a hand-stamped name that had been erased beyond recognition. I walked around him, and then my eyes caught on something shiny in the grass, a key. Ordinary, slightly bent, old, covered with rust. It was lying neatly, almost deliberately, as if someone had put it down. I picked it up and examined it. No notes. But it feels like the key to something metallic. Perhaps from a chest, locker, or gate. He put it in his pocket. Such things never just lie there. I walked on, and almost immediately noticed a second campfire, much fresher. It was barely smoldering, giving off a faint, slightly sweet smell, not of wood, but of something that resembled fabric and plastic. There was a plastic container with leftovers nearby. Something like instant noodles. The man who was sitting here was just recently. Maybe a couple of hours ago. He was eating, warming himself. Waited. Maybe it's me. In a pile of trash, I found something that unsettled me, my photo. Taken from the back, by the car, at the moment when I was still unloading the cameras. Someone printed it out on glossy paper and carefully cut off the edges. This is not just an observation. This is surveillance. I gripped the paper tightly, trying to contain my panic. Someone has been by my side all this time. Someone was watching me, knew what I looked like, what I was doing, where I was going. I looked around, then sharply illuminated the bushes. Empty. But now I knew he was there. Further, worse. When I returned to the center of the cemetery, I saw that one of the cameras had disappeared. The tripod was there, but the camera was gone. She just disappeared. There was a trace of the attachment on the ground, but the device itself was gone. I ran up and started shining around. Nothing. Only a piece of cloth with the remnants of my prints on it. It's clear that someone took it off carefully, and then left it as a hint, you don't control anything. At that moment, I felt really sick. Really bad. This is not fear in the dark. This is the fear of a person who understands that he is being used. I didn't just choose the wrong place. I became part of someone else's game. And, apparently, he was losing. I started to move towards the exit. No longer thinking about filming, not about shots, I just wanted to get to the car. But as soon as I got to the cemetery gate, I saw that the door was locked with a chain that had not been there before. A huge padlock, a fresh bracket. She didn't look old. She was hanged recently. Quite recently. I tried to walk around the cemetery along the fence. There was barbed wire everywhere where it was possible to get through. Pieces of rope, boards with nails, and even primitive traps in some places. One of them almost pierced my leg. Someone has isolated the area. I went back, sat down on the ground and started thinking. And then I heard the beep of a walkie-talkie. Deaf, hoarse. Not mine. I didn't bring a walkie-talkie. But someone took it. And now she was squeaking. I got up. The sound came from behind a row of graves, to the left of the old tree. As I approached, I saw a backpack. Black, worn. There was no new lock on it. Next to it is an empty water bottle and a Polaroid photo. It was me in the picture. Sleeping. In the car. Someone was inside my car, taking pictures of me in my sleep. I didn't just follow, I approached. Very close. I reached for the walkie-talkie, and at that moment something hissed in it, as if someone was breathing directly into the microphone. I froze. And then I heard the phrase, "Do you still think it's just a shoot?" My hand was shaking, clutching the plastic case. I was standing in the middle of the cemetery, surrounded by tombstones, a camera that someone had taken, photos that someone had taken, and a lock that someone had put up so I wouldn't leave. I was trapped. The real one. Without mysticism. No ghosts. Only people. Human. Or several. Someone who had been following me for more than a day or two. Someone who didn't just want to scare. Someone who had a plan. And I, with no chance of escape, stood in this field of the dead, trying to figure out why I stood with this radio in my hand, as if it were the last link to reality, although it was she who destroyed my confidence in what was happening. The sound of breathing in the speaker was still going on, ragged, heavy, as if the man on the other side had just run. Or maybe he just wanted me to think that. I wanted to say something. Ask a question. Demand an answer. But his mouth was dry, and his voice was stuck in his throat. I just turned off the radio. Not because it was reasonable, but because I couldn't hear that voice anymore. He was too confident. Too close. I looked around slowly. Backpack. Photo. The lock on the gate. The key is in my pocket. Abruptly, as if waking up, I pulled out the key and ran to the gate on the side of the main entrance. Maybe it's her lock. I ran up, inserted the key, but it didn't fit. The discrepancy was obvious. The shape of the teeth was different. At that moment, I began to realize that the key I had found was not here to save me. He's a piece of the puzzle. Some kind of alien game where I'm a pawn and I don't set the rules. Everything I did, everything I found, was thought out in advance. Someone wanted me to take this particular route, in that order, and I've already played their script. I walked back to the center of the cemetery. I went to the place where the missing camera was. He examined the ground, and I found the tracks. Small but obvious are shoe prints leading towards the western part of the cemetery, to where the old brick chapel stood. It had been abandoned for a long time. I knew about that. I saw her myself in the afternoon when I was setting up the equipment. But then she looked like just an old wreck. Now it seemed like the only place anyone who had been following me could hide. I went there. Every movement was deliberate. The flashlight trembled in his hand, as did the hand itself. The chapel door was half open, creaking on its hinges. I pushed it. It gave way with a sharp sound, and I immediately smelled the smell. It was heavy, damp, and smelled of mold, iron, and something else, sweet. It looked like there were old fruits or canned goods lying here. But in the corner, on the floor, I noticed a mattress. Battered, with traces of body oil or sweat. And next to it is another photo. Me again. But now with a face, close up. Made with a long focus. The camera was right in front of me when I was assembling the equipment at the car. It wasn't just a stalker. It was someone who was collecting dossiers. Too methodical. Too accurate. Not crazy, not homeless. Someone who understood what they were doing. Someone who had the equipment, the time, and the purpose. And then I noticed another object. Notepad. Rough, paperback, untitled. Opened. There are records inside. Short, with dates. Here is an example. I arrived at the parking lot at 1910. I unloaded the tripods. The camera on the left was left unattended for 5 minutes. At 1940, the lamp is turned on. It's too bright. Scared of noise. The surveillance continues. And then there are dozens of pages. My actions, my words, even my reactions. Someone was watching me, analyzing me, recording me. There was a dictaphone nearby. I turned it on, and I heard my voice. When I was talking about the camera. When I was laughing at something by the car. Me, when I was swearing under my breath. Someone was recording the sounds when I didn't even know there was anyone nearby. All this is accurate. No passes. Even my breaths were recorded. I stood with this notebook in my hands, listening to myself from the outside, and felt how the line between reality and fear was being lost. It wasn't a haunted house. Not a cemetery. It was a cleverly planned theater, and I was in it, a guest, a spectator, and a victim at the same time. And suddenly there was a sound behind the wall. Easy. It was as if someone had touched a stone. I pulled out the flashlight and illuminated the corners. Empty. But the sound was repeated. It's getting closer. I left the chapel, and then the voice came back on over the speaker of the walkie-talkie, which I still hadn't thrown away. No hissing. Crisp, clear. Have you found enough to understand? Or do you want to know more? I was standing with this radio in my hand, my heart was pounding somewhere in my throat, and the silence around me was so thick, as if time itself had stopped. Have you found enough to understand? Or do you want to know more? That voice was still ringing in my ears, as if it wasn't coming from a speaker, but from inside my head. I slowly lowered the radio and thought about it. Understand? What was I supposed to understand? What kind of game is this, where all the rules are not written by me, but my every move seems to be predicted in advance? It was like someone had been studying me for days. It's like I'm a project that's been watched for a long time, conclusions have been drawn, reactions have been checked. But the scariest thing is that I began to remember how many little things in recent months in my life seemed strange. Someone erased a car number in the mirror, undelivered parcels, strange calls with beeps in response. At the time, I attributed it to the usual coincidences. Now everything is connected in one line. I picked up my notebook and flipped through the pages again. There were descriptions of my habits. What time do I usually fall asleep? How long do I take a shower? And at what volume is my music playing in the car? Someone was really living my routine. I was watching. But why? And most importantly, who? I decided to leave. Just leave. Quickly, before I started to doubt it. The chapel, the cemetery, my belongings, the photo, all this was left behind. But the feeling that I was not alone grew stronger with every step. I walked along the overgrown path, going out to the side gate, skirted the cemetery wall and finally saw my car. She was standing just as I had left her. But there's a strange smell in the cabin. Very subtle, almost elusive, but alien. A mixture of tobacco and what looks like cheap cologne. I froze. Then he bent down and looked through the window. There was another photo on the back seat. Right on my backpack. Not sealed, just abandoned. I opened the door and carefully took the picture. I'm on it. At the very moment when I was holding a notebook in the chapel. The photo was taken from behind, through a crack in the wall. It meant that someone was there with me the whole time. Watched. Fixed it. I turned around abruptly, but there was nothing around. No rustling, no footsteps, no flashes of light. Only the cold air, as if it hadn't yet broken, although I knew for sure it should have. The morning haze spread over the ground, like in movies where the hero comes out of the fog, but here I was the hero, and it was all happening in reality. I started the engine. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't turn the key the first time. When the engine started purring, I felt my breath catch. I no longer thought about ending the overnight stay or picking up the equipment. I just wanted to leave. Away. As far away as possible. I pulled onto the road and started picking up speed. The same trees as at night flashed by the side of the road, but now there was something different about them. As if they were being watched, not by the forest. Open, but faceless. As if the very air was a witness to everything that had happened. After a few kilometers, I stopped at a gas station. I needed to catch my breath. I went inside and bought some water. The cashier, a tired guy with dark circles under his eyes, looked at me as if I had come to the store with bloody hands. I didn't say a word, just handed over the money and left. He put the bottle on the hood, took a few sips, and only then noticed that someone had drawn a line through the dust on the front window of the car. One long, straight line. Not a text, not a drawing. Just a straight line. With your finger. I looked at her and couldn't figure out when it happened. While I was in the store? Or even earlier? So someone was around again. Watched. And he made it clear that I didn't leave. I will never leave. Because now I'm inside something bigger. I became a participant, and it's impossible to get out. I got back in the car and went home. I never touched those materials again. I burned the recordings from the dictaphone, the copies of the photographs. Not out of fear. On principle. I didn't want them to have any more reasons to continue. I didn't write reports or make videos. I just wanted to erase everything related to that night. But one day, about 2 weeks later, I received a letter. In a paper envelope, without a return address. Inside is a sheet of white paper. It has one sentence on it. You handled yourself well. Shall we do it again?